Hi, and welcome to another episode of Wine and Wisdom. I'm Thomas Le Hoang, and you're listening to the TL podcast, where knowledge is shared and no one takes themselves too seriously.
We are live.
Hello.
Hi. Hey.
How's it
How are
going?
we, guys? Jeez, seriously, we're live, right?
Yeah,
We
well,
are live.
I don't know. Every single time the way we start, every single time is quiet. And
So smooth, so smooth.
the fireworks goes off at the end. We can't switch it off fast enough.
I'm trying to get this intellectual experience out of my head, man. What a joke.
We
It's
just
like waking up after a hangover and trying to work out where you are. Seriously.
We just don't want to waste it, mate, because usually after 3 minutes we work out you've stuffed something up.
All right, we still have one more minute.
we do. See, we just see Mads, we just try and get it right every week or every month. And we're just making sure we're right on time today. Right on time.
Yeah, we couldn't insult you, buddy.
Nervous, mate?
What happened though?
Are you ready? As soon
Just relax, mate. It's easy, mate.
Really
I don't know what you're worried about.
Quickly scull half that bottle. Quick.
big breaths.
You clearly haven't drunk enough.
Making me feel great, Kim.
I'm here for you.
Thank you.
All righty, here we go. We have a special guest, everybody, today. We have the one and only Madeline Troth from Wiseberry Foster. She's actually one of my dear colleagues, and she's joining us today to share an inspirational story. So welcome, Mads.
welcome.
Yay.
Good on you. All right, and she's gonna have to wait a few minutes because we're gonna do our wine first. Which, by the way, so far, Chris has won the last two, and so that I don't forget today.
How?
I'm winning. I've won this one. All right, so let's start with your wine first. But yours is qualified, Chris, because it was handed in late.
I've got a bobblehead on my dashboard that looks exactly the same one. It's of the Michelin Man.
You're so
Actually,
lucky this is G-rated, man.
All right, let's start with you, Lou.
Okay, so I have Pinot Noir. You can see here, 2020 Tasmania. I had my wine in late this podcast. I had to admit, I had to fly this morning, so I couldn't take it on the plane with me. So I had to get it while I was here. So it's the best I could find nearby. So
That's nice. Okay.
A bullshit excuse. Well done.
Well, I know that she's a guest, but I believe she's got her wine too. Maddie, have you got one?
I do.
What have you got?
I've got a 2021 Fiano. It's actually imported from Italy. This is a bit of a significant wine to me because I had this bottle of wine on my very first date with my partner. So it holds quite a lot of significance to me, but yes, it is a wine.
I can't wait to try it.
Nice. So
You've just discovered that
which part of Italy is it from? You know?
I don't know that. I probably
The Italian part.
Yeah. All of the back of it is written in Italian. I can't understand anything it says.
Google Translator. It works wonders.
Okay. Well,
You've just discovered he only spent $6 on your first date.
all right. What about you, Chris?
I've got a Reschkle. This is the lower end of the Reschkle wine list. It's called the budget-friendly bottle. It's a 2020. It's Cap Sav. Still comes from the limestone coast. As you all know, limestone's good to in the soil for great grapes. And this winery actually started as a Hereford stud farm for cattle.
Wow.
In 1906, and then they converted over to grapes quite a few years after that. It's still running under the same name. They do make some really top-end wines, which I've had on here, but I bought a few bottles of this because it's actually not a bad drop for a cheap bottle. So,
Judging by the score you got, mate, I'd say some of the horse shit has affected some of the grapes.
didn't get filtered out through the filtration process.
Limestone and horse shit.
It's Herefords, they're cows.
Hereford stud, mate. They're
Oh,
cattle.
I don't know what stud is. I didn't swear.
All right, but your wine, man.
Very, very much like it. But
I think we've had Katnook Estate on here before from the Coonawarra. It's a Cab Sav, this one from 2013, so it is 10 years old.
Wow.
South Australian wine. We've described the winery before, and I think it's going to be beautiful. But I too didn't put my bottle in, so it counts for nothing.
Yeah, but even if it did count, you actually got beaten by this one here by 0.03 points.
Oh,
Right. And what I wanted you guys to have a look at is the last grape. The last grape is Mataro,
yeah.
and that's originally from Spain, but mainly actually now found in France, a lot in Australia as well. And that's the one when you put a little bit of that in your Shiraz, that gives you all that Cabernet Sauvignon-like style and fruit, but without being a Cab Sav, you know?
Mm.
There was a bin, because I went through the Penfolds bin as well. There was a bin 13, I think it was, which had the same grape on it, but it only rated a 3.8, so I didn't get it. I mean, there was a bin 28, which was a 4.1. I didn't get that either. So.
Well,
Cheers.
cheers. Good to have you, Madeline.
Cheers. Oh, she's having a little drop.
All right. So let's do 5 minutes of news. What's worthy news?
No, it's been a big month. Russia was folding and then it didn't. New South Wales was New South Wales in the state of origin. Today we found out Gladys is corrupt, but she's not going to get charged.
And inflation's gone down.
And the Reserve Bank bent us even further over earlier in the month. And today I paid $2.20 for a litre of petrol. So life's good. And I'd actually like to thank the Reserve Bank, because my new diet of 2-minute noodles, cask wine and riding a bike to work has been great for my weight loss. So thank you, everybody.
There's always a silver lining, Cam. Always.
That was the silver lining. Yeah, the silver whining is... So it's been a great month. I just can't wait for next Tuesday. I think it's going to be brilliant.
Tuesdays must trigger you now.
On a serious note, we're not a political podcast, but this stuff with Gladys, like she quit and claimed she was innocent. Report come out today. She's absolutely corrupt as hell. And that's followed with, but no charges will be laid. What is going on? I don't understand. What is going on in the world?
Well, it's very simple, mate. If they have to start putting politicians to jail for those things, they'll all be in jail. So I reckon they gang up together and say, no, let's not put each other in jail.
The jails will be fuller than they are. There wouldn't be enough room.
Any other news? No, not worthy news.
We can go to the Titanic if we want. That went well. I'll tell you what, and the Reserve Bank's right, because inflation is a powerful thing. In 1912, it cost £7 to die in the North Atlantic Ocean. And now, in 2023, it costs $250,000 to die in the North Atlantic Ocean. So inflation is real. Good on the Reserve Bank.
It's a shit joke, man.
That's a great joke. No, I'm deadly serious.
I don't think we should need to joke with that, but that's you still, Cam. It's fine. We go with that one. All right, let's start the podcast, Luke.
So Maddie's here to share her inspiring story with us all, which I think I know a lot about it because I went through the journey with her, but you guys will be inspired, and anyone that's watching, I'm sure, will be moved and changed very much so. So Maddie had an incident at the beginning of the year, which has dramatically changed her life, and she's here to share that with us. So Mads, I guess we need to start with what actually was the incident and how did it happen?
Yes, so I'm just going to put it out there before I start, though, a bit of a trigger warning to anyone who is listening, because the story is quite graphic and I will be talking a lot about trauma. So I kind of just wanted to put that out there. So basically on the 2nd of January of this year, the day after New Year's, my partner and I were fishing on the breakwall down at Foster. We're about 1.5 meters down on the rocks. And pretty much the rock that I was on as we were fishing, it tipped And as it tipped, I fell forward. My leg caught a oyster bed very badly, and I fell into the ocean. Pretty much, that's what happened. I was lucky that there was but unlucky. There was an oyster bed on the kind of coming out from the rocks as well. So I landed feet first on that. So that kind of caught my fall. But I was chest deep, grazed the back of my legs. But unfortunately, my leg copped the full force of that oyster bed.
No, I mean, that sounds horrific enough, but I don't think anybody can appreciate the extreme damage that did to Maddie's leg. I've seen the pictures, and I think you guys may have by now, but you know, when she told me initially, I was like, oh geez, Mads, that's bad. And then she sent me the pictures and I was like, oh my goodness, like when
it happened, I actually had quite a number of thoughts go through my head as I fell in. And it's kind of funny how the brain works, because I had pain in lots of different areas. So at that very moment, my leg wasn't the thing that hurt the most. I'd caught like the backs of my legs and my feet and my leg, and the front of my leg. And my very first thought was when I pulled my leg up out of the water and I saw it. And I was met with a very, very graphic, confronting scene. And my very first thought was, that's my leg, because it was the worst gash I had ever seen, but it was on me. It wasn't like in the movies or, you know, on TV where it's not actually real. And my second thought was, okay, don't panic, because I knew that the minute that I panicked, I would go into shock, and that's when things would get really, really bad. And I called out for my partner. He was actually like straight behind me anyway, and he came rushing down, and we shared some very colorful words together. But that was basically and as dramatic as it sounds, I will share one of my thoughts there was, this is not happening. This is not how I'm going to die. This is not how I'm going to bleed out, because there was a significant amount of blood. It didn't bleed profusely because it was very, very deep, but I did for a split second think, get me out of this situation, because where I actually fell in is where all of the grey nurse sharks kind of come by on the breakwall. And I thought, oh God, like this can't be the place. Like, I just get me up onto safety, and you know, we'll go from there. Zach had asked, he reassured me straight away, and you will find out through this podcast, he was the most incredible person, and I couldn't have done it without him. But he pretty much basically said straight away, you're okay, everything is going to be okay. So I said to him, run, go get help. There were some people we could kind of see on the path that were walking, and we just yelled out to them. So we had a couple of people, this one guy in particular, I don't know what his name is. I just know that he was on holidays, poor guy. I think I've just basically traumatized him for life. He ripped off his shirt. Him and Zach came down and they tourniqueted my leg back together. And I would later find out that the way they did that saved me from losing a lot of blood and, you know, evidently bleeding out, because even though I wasn't losing a whole lot of blood right there and then, the doctors and nurses said basically it comes. So they tied my leg back together, but because I was so steep down the rocks, there was no other possible way for me to get back up onto the path unless I walked up myself. So I put on a brave face and I said to them, you know, basically help me up, just get me up and I will walk up the rocks. So one hand I'm holding my leg together, another arm is behind someone. And I kind of hopped up, as painful as it was. And then after that's a little bit hazy. I just remember being scooped up and carried onto the path. From there was quite a number of people around us. And a lot of people were talking, you know, should we call an ambulance? Should we do this? Should we do that? And in that moment, I said to Zach, put me in the car and take me to hospital. I wasn't waiting for an ambulance. I don't know my anatomy that well, so I didn't know what I'd actually gone through, but I just knew that it was very, very bad and I just needed to get to a hospital ASAP. So he put me in the car, and I just remember us not speaking for a solid 10 minutes. We were dead silent. And then we, in classic me and Zach, motion, we kind of turned to each other and we just burst out laughing. We were hysterically laughing. And he was like, holy shit, your leg is open. And I was like, I know, imagine how bad my scar is going to be. So we kind of used a little bit of humor to get us through it. And then I just kept saying to him, just distract me. So we played I Spy all the way to Tari Hospital. So yeah, once we got to Tari Hospital, he just basically legged it in there, got me into emergency. They took it apart, realized how bad it was, and immediately they said, this will have to get surgically put back together. And I just, for me, the adrenaline had just started wearing off at that point. My chin was starting to shake. I was starting to get a little bit worked up. I'd called my mum, and I just remember saying, like in my head saying, don't freak her out. I have had so many injuries over the years. If you know me, I've had my fair share of injuries. So I called her and I put on a brave voice and I was like, hi Mom, just letting you know, like I've had a bit of a fall fishing, but I'm okay. Yeah, I've cut my leg a little bit. I'll probably need a couple of stitches, but we're just going to the hospital just to make sure. And then she'd later find out that it was more than just a couple of stitches. But yeah, and then I went into the waiting room. I was there for quite a while, and one of my very first texts was to Miss Louise. And I think we were looking at it the other day, and it was something along the lines of, you'll never guess what I've just done. And then one of her replies was, pics or it didn't happen. And then I sent it through to her, and I think she really regretted asking me for the photo.
Yeah, I did, because my stomach's not fantastic. And
she was like, oh my God.
Yeah. But even to the extent, like what you're explaining, Mads, is, obviously without seeing it, you can't appreciate, no one can appreciate to the extent of the damage. And I think you even severed a nerve.
So I severed, this is where it'll get quite graphic. So it was about 4 to 5 centimeters wide, 15 centimeters long. I'd gone through my front muscle. I'd actually gone so deep that I carved my tibia, and I severed about 6 nerves.
When Mads now has no feeling in her.
Yeah. So that resulting in, I do not have any feeling in the top side of my right foot. I don't have any feeling in the back of my leg, like my calf muscle, like basically from my knee to my ankle. And I have very kind of odd feeling around the scar itself.
Get the photo on your computer, Mads. I think we need to share the photo.
I think someone will have it.
Oh, listen, it's a bit of a horror movie. I'm going to go through this, but we should have warned that it was an maybe R15 plus podcast. Now let's go through all of this, because so you got operated right there and then, and what's going through your mind after the operation or the next day? Can you just tell us?
Yeah, so they told me I would be operated on the very next day in the morning. It happened a little bit later on through the day. I will share, there is a story that I'm going to share. I wasn't going to, but it does play a big part in why I was so affected. So I had quite a number of doctors and nurses that were looking after me throughout the night. I finally got to bed. We went in about 6 o'clock, and I got to bed around 10 o'clock. And the doctors and nurses, I had one doctor who was convinced that he could just clean it, stitch it, and send me home. And all the rest of the doctors were like, if you do that, she's going to go home, she's going to get an infection, she'll come back, and we'll have to take her leg. And that's when things will get messy. I've had quite a lot of pain medication at this point. So I'm sitting at the end of the bed like, well, what is going on? So this one doctor, he comes back and he says to Zach and I'm going to need to clean the wound. And so I'm thinking, okay, that's fine. I would later find out that it was supposed to be cleaned under general anesthetic, not local. So I was given about 8 local anesthetic needles that went straight on and around the wound. You would need to then clean it with like a whole bag of saline solution. Now, when I said before, like I've had my fair share of injuries, so I've experienced pain. I know what pain is like, but there are not enough words in the English dictionary to explain the amount of pain that I felt in that moment. I cried so hard. I was screaming. My poor partner was half holding me on the bed, half holding my hand, and I could see like what, you know, my pain was doing to him. And I remember in that moment thinking the pain was so bad, I was for sure thinking I was going to die. Like that's how bad it was. But then on the other hand, thinking this hurts so bad, I want to die. Like it was awful. And I just looked up at Zach and, you know, we just held each other's gaze. And I thought, you know, he's going to be the one to help me get through this. And I think it lasted for about a minute or 2 minutes. And it was, you know, intense crying and intense screaming. But in that moment, you know, I locked his gaze and realized, you know, this person is my why, this person is my reason. And if I can just get through this and get to the other side, then everything's going to be okay. But that pain, I will never, ever forget. And it has stuck with me and it's caused me awful nightmares. And even when I had the surgery the next day and they found out that that's what happened, they were just basically saying the psychological terror they wouldn't even be able to imagine. And that night I convinced Zach, you know, go home, get some rest, because to be honest, he was no good to me if he was going to be exhausted. I was in the best possible place. We also have a cat, so I needed him to go home and feed the cat. That's what was going through in my head. So I sent him home and he was very, very reluctant. He didn't want to go home. And that night was the worst night of my life. I stayed awake for 6 hours straight and I cried. And when I tell you that I did not stop crying, it was just 6 hours of just the most awful feeling. And I had lots of doctors and nurses coming in. Some of them were so empathetic and amazing, and you know, I will be forever grateful for them. But I also had a couple that were coming in saying, you know, you're so lucky, but you're also not out of the woods yet, because infection, like, I don't know if you know, but an oyster cut holds the dirtiest infection in the world. And if that, because I'd gone through my muscle and my bone was exposed, if that infection had traveled, I was at a high risk of losing my leg, or basically from the knee down. So I'm going through my head, and I think this was a huge moment for me to be like, there's still so much that I need to do with 2 legs. There's still so much, you know, I need to do. Did I think I was going to die? No, I didn't think it was that bad, but I also was very fearful that I was going to lose my leg, because the doctors and nurses were saying to me, you know, you aren't out of the woods yet. We need to, we have cleaned it out, but we won't know the full extent until we go in for surgery. So that night was awful. I can't sugarcoat it. And I think I was holding, like, I was trying to put on such a brave face with Zach around, and as soon as he left, I just lost it, and I just felt myself totally lose control. And yeah, it was awful. So surgery the next day.
You're going too fast. Maddie. Were you crying for 6 hours because of all those thoughts of I don't want to lose my leg, or something else?
It's like, it was a mixture of everything. It was a mixture of feeling sad, of feeling scared, of feeling alone. But I also said to my mum the next morning, I was like, I think I can understand why babies cry when they're exhausted, because I think I was just exhausted, and because I was going into surgery, I couldn't have any like water and food, so I was just drained. And the more you cry, the more you dehydrate yourself. So I was just, yeah, it was just every single emotion possible was going through my head, and I was so uncomfortable. Like, I could not get comfortable, and I just had this awful pulsating ache in my leg, and I knew what was. I think that's fun. It's funny how the brain works, because when you know what it looks like, it feels 10 times worse. Because a lot of people ask me like, oh my God, I bet it hurt. To be honest, it didn't hurt as bad as what you think. Like, because it happened so fast, it just felt like a deep scratch. That initial cut itself didn't hurt that bad. It felt very hot, but yeah, the after pain and everything that went with it, and because I saw how bad it was, I think that my brain was almost, you know, playing a few little tricks on me, because the worse it looks, the worse it feels.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had the operations. How were you after the operation?
Oh, there's a lot that I don't remember. I did have quite a couple of complications during surgery that resulted in my surgery going for quite a bit longer than what it was supposed to. I came out of surgery and was really, I remember just kind of waking up groggily and seeing that everything was okay. I had 2 legs and I was like, okay, we're on, we're good. And it was relief, but then it was, oh my God, the pain was so bad. So they gave me a lot of pain relief, and a lot of it was very, very strong. But I just remember feeling, I just wanted to see Zach, tell him that I'm okay, tell him that everything is going to be okay. But I also wanted answers. I wanted to know, for me, it was really important in that moment to know how many stitches I had. I just wanted to know how many I had. And I kept asking the nurses, and because I think I had a team of 4 or 5 surgeons, they were all working on me. So no one could really pinpoint exactly. They were just like, oh, I gave you 5 and I gave you 3. And it ended up being 15 internal and 15 external, and then 5 up the muscle. Are you okay, Thomas?
No, I'm not. That's
I
why
was expecting more, to be honest.
This is so
I
good.
was actually
expecting more. I'm a bit underwhelmed, Mads. It's 46.
But the stitches, they weren't your typical fishing lines.
It was so like
No, I get it. But
it was so ugly, but in a good way. But the stitches were not, like, it was not clean. It was, but yeah. So I basically got to go in, and Zach told me, you know, how I was so groggy, and I was making I spoke to my grandmother and my mum. Apparently, I don't remember a thing. And there's a photo which actually got shared. I barely even remember it, because I said to Zach, can you send me some photos from, you know, when I was in hospital? And he's sending me photos that I don't even remember. But my nurse, so my head doctor and surgeon, she came in the following day, I think it was, to basically tell me how it went and tell me what they did and everything. And I said to her, like, I can't feel my foot. Is that just from the local anesthetic? And she said, oh, you've actually severed quite a number of nerves, probably about half a dozen. So she said, I'm sorry to tell you, probably won't get the feeling in your foot back. Because we kind of had to do a bit of assessment, and I could say where I felt and where I didn't feel. I'll probably get the feeling in the back of my calf muscle back maybe 3 years, which is very positive. The top side of my foot, I probably won't ever get back, and that's fine. I've learnt to live with it. It just means that it doesn't hurt when I kick my foot, so that's great. But yeah,
mad party tricks, Madsy. That's going to be awesome.
I don't know if you've seen the movie Mr. Good Deeds, but have a look at that movie.
I've had people mention that to me.
Gotta ask, do you feel like oysters or not? Gotta ask.
I love them.
No,
And
that's good. That's good.
a lot of people said, oh my God, doesn't like eating them freak you out? No.
Can I ask one thing, Maddie? Before going in, you said, yeah, like when you were crying, you said you had so much to do.
Yeah.
Right? Before the surgery, you said you had so much to do. After the surgery, you look down, you go, all right, I've got 2 legs, we're good to go.
Yes.
Talk us through that. what's going in your mind about what's so much to do and what's good to go? What are we talking about there?
For me, I think when I realized that the possibility I could have lost my leg, and I had that feeling, I thought, have I become stagnant in my life? Have I stopped doing the things that I loved? Like I love surfing, and I stopped doing that. And I can't even give you a reason why. There was just a lot of, and I think a lot of people will say, oh, is it because you got into a relationship? No, like Zach and I, we do a lot of things together. But I think in that moment, I thought there's so much that life has to offer. And as soon as I saw that everything was fine, I was like, okay, like life isn't going to go back to normal, but all of the stuff that I was worried about, because I was thinking like, how is it all going to work if that was the path that was going to happen to me? How is life going to, basically, and I was also thinking about my family. I had a pregnant sister that I didn't want to stress her out. I had another sister who was overseas, and I didn't want to worry them. And I almost, I was almost feeling like I'm going to be such a burden to everyone. But I think that this is a massive part of how I changed my mindset, because when I say there's things that I wanted to do, I was doing great in my life before this happened. I was kicking goals, and I have been kicking goals since the day I was born. I'm so proud of what I have done with my life. But now I look back and I think, okay, every single day you wake up, be grateful for it. And Thomas said this when he visited Tari a couple of weeks ago, and he said, something to be grateful for is, as soon as you wake up, you're alive. And I think that every single day. I think I was given a second chance. Not many people can say that. And even though life for me, it's pretty normal. It's not 100% back to what it was before, but there's just things that I do now that I didn't do before. I like to say yes. I like to say yes to new things, and Louise would know more than anyone. The amount of things I have said yes to in my life, and I've started doing new things, has significantly changed my life.
I can't even begin to describe the change in Maddie since this event. And don't get me wrong, as she says, like she was kicking many goals and she was a great human. But I've seen that she did struggle a lot with, like we all do, like a little bit of self-doubt and a little bit of confidence and NGM or whatever we talk about. But it's like it's been the most dramatic perspective shift for you. And the most significant changes, I think, have been within your mindset and how you pick yourself up, but then you see other people, you recognize other people now having a bad day, off day. Like just the other day we were together and she goes, your energy's off. What's up? And I was like, oh, okay. So here's what's up. But it's like, she's like a magnet to finding and feeling these things now. And it's so awesome.
So Maddie, can I ask just on what, sorry, Cam, can I ask just on what Lou said? It's something very, there's a word that she used, confidence, right? That you're more confident now. Do you think the fact that you've gone through such a life-changing or such an event that you now go, man, I've handled that, I can now handle anything? Is that sort of maybe the mentality, or where does that?
I'll say yes. I have had I've had a few crappy things happen to me over the years where I have overcome that and I've come out stronger. But I think that this definitely, I think I needed this to happen to realize the potential that I have. I have huge potential in my life, in my career, my relationships, my friendships. And I think that before what happened, I was just plateauing through life, and it's just everybody does it. Whereas it's just a wake-up call for me to realize there's more I can throw into my job, into my friendships, my relationships, and lots of different things. And look, there was a few turning points. Like I didn't just have this happen to me straight away. like I struggled extremely bad, and probably not from other people's point of view, but from my point of view, I felt like I was holding myself together very well. I think I was putting on a brave face, but inside I was not. I was
Are you talking about previously, prior to the accident?
after.
Okay.
So I was having terrible nightmares after the accident. My confidence, my self-doubt, I was doubting myself a lot, and just in different things in life. It wasn't even physical. It wasn't even.
Just to point out as well, which you guys may not realize because Mads hasn't mentioned it, but after the accident, Maddie slowly came back to work. But when she did, she was on a walking stick for 4 months or 5 months or something. So it was, how long, Mads? Sorry? 3 months. Sorry, it felt like
I started off in a wheelchair because I lacerated my feet so bad. I couldn't walk. So that was something that else they surgically fixed up when I was in hospital. So I was in a wheelchair for probably the first week. Then I went on to the underarm crutches. I was on them for probably a month, and then I went to the wrist crutches, and then I was on a walking stick because not only from the pain of the cut, but I couldn't feel my foot. So I had to train my leg to kind of work again. And I was so, I don't want to say embarrassed because I felt like such an old lady, but it was just, I felt like a bit of dignity was taken from me. And I was so slow moving, and obviously I had to do a lot of physio. That was going to be the biggest thing that would help me recover. And my very first day of physio, Louise was actually in foster. And I said to her, I was like, okay, I got this. And I went, and it wasn't great. He said, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This isn't great. And he gave me about 1 to 2 years of recovery. And I was going to be on my walking stick indefinitely until I started to show improvement. And I went back to my car, and I had one of those like breakdown moments, and I'm hitting the steering wheel, and they were a little bit nervous. I developed something called compartment syndrome, which also meant I was not out of the woods. That can result in me losing my leg too. And I went back to the office, and I had a bit of a cry to Lou, and I thought, why me? What have I done in this life to deserve this? I've been through so much over the last few years. What could I possibly have done to deserve this? But I'm not going to lie, I look back on this now, and this was always going to happen. You can't change fate. What was destined for me, for the past, for now, for the future, it's going to happen. There's nothing I could have done. Like, I made a choice.
Sorry, Mads. What was the turning point though? So you started off saying that you're in a dark place and you're holding it together pretty well and putting on a brave face. And I know everything you're about to get into, but before you get into that, everyone has an aha moment, right? And well, not everyone, because a lot of people would stay and play the victim and use it for probably the rest of their life. Definitely the immediate future. And when you are on your own, because there would have been a lot of hours spent alone, one in hospital beds too, at physiotherapy and doing all that stuff. Please just tell me, for God's sake, it wasn't a Brené Brown book, but what was it? Please, I'm begging you to tell me it had nothing to do with Brené Brown.
Just so you know,
there was a turning point. You had a
There was, but I'll say there was a few turning points that involved about 3 different people.
Not Brené Brown. Come on, Mads.
Not Brené Brown, but one.
Yeah!
It was Louise. So she was my first turning point, actually. I'd had a meeting with my leaders about something, and I kind of, as we finished up, I sat in my seat, and Lou I think she noticed my energy, and she was like, are you okay? And I lost it. I lost it so hard that I couldn't even catch my breath. Like, I was sobbing, and I think I was like apologizing, saying, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm getting so upset, but I let everything out, everything that I had been feeling. Lou is not only my leader, she's like my sister. She's one of my greatest friends, and I have shared secrets and stories with Louise that I have not shared with a lot of people. She's just one of those people that I just felt so comfortable in that moment to share everything that I was feeling. And I did say to her, look, I know I've got a problem. I know I need to go and get help, and I do plan on getting help. So that was one of my moments. That night, I went home to Zach. Zach knew that I'd had a really bad day. Again, I lost it. I was crying, and I said to him, like, I'm here. I don't know why I'm crying. I should be happy and grateful, but I just can't shake this awful feeling and this sickness that I've got in the back of my mind. And again, he kind of said to me, look, I think you might have a little bit of PTSD. And in my mind, I was completely rejected that. I was like, nope, look, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with PTSD. But I was just like, no, I don't have that. I don't have that at all. I know I need help, but I don't have PTSD. And things after that slowly started to get worse. Like I knew that I had a problem. I knew that I needed help, but I am someone who doesn't like to ask for help. And I was not going to go and see a therapist or a doctor. That's just who I am. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not who I am. And I was having this really bad day. It was actually Anzac Day. And I went and saw one of my very dear friends, Josie. She had been on this wellness and fitness journey. I'd been watching her on social media, and I thought, oh God, I would love to feel like that. I would love to just love myself again. So I went and saw her, and we shared lots of different words. And she said to me, go for a run. When you go home, go for a run. Even if it's a walk, you don't have to sprint. That's what helped me. She said, go for a run. So with all of the wise knowledge she gave me and Louise had given me and my family and Zach, I went home, I took it really slow, I went for a run, and you know what? I felt great. And that day was the start of like me being reborn, because I then started to try new things. And I obviously am very careful with my leg, but that was another thing. Like, I was not a runner before this happened. I love fitness and health and all of that stuff, but you know, I think that was another big thing. Was I cycle as well, and I've got 2 legs. Why not use them?
You lost me, mate. You were good with no Brene Brown. Doing exercise, you've killed
I
me.
saw your eyes start to glaze over.
So
Running.
I know we've had lots and lots of conversations about this, but I think, you know, it's something that you said in that moment, it all sort of went flashing by. And they say that, you know, when you feel like this could be the end, your life flashes by and you suddenly think about all the things you wish you could do or should have done, or the fact that you may have become complacent. And I think, you know, obviously a lot of times it takes people to hit rock bottom to find a foundation to rebuild from. What would you say to anybody who it might help, where they don't have to get to that level of hitting rock bottom? Looking back, what would you tell your old self now, knowing what you know now?
Don't be afraid to talk to someone. Like, I had a conversation with someone very dear to me this afternoon, and I said they were feeling quite vulnerable and angry and upset about something. And I said, something that I have been telling myself is, feel what you feel. You are allowed to feel what you feel. If you feel sad or angry, you are validated to, like, you're allowed to feel like that. And if someone makes you feel like you shouldn't be sad or upset or angry or disappointed, they don't own your feelings. You own your feelings. So you're allowed to feel what you feel. And I think that's the best advice I can give to someone is
100%.
Feel what you feel. But I also said, but then move on. Don't hold on to that feeling. Leave it at the door. Leave it at work. Don't carry it inside. Find a way to move on from it. And I think that that's what I did. Was I was sad. I was angry at the world. I was all sorts of things. But then I made an active choice that I need to change. I need to change my life, or I need to do something. And that is my way of moving on from it. So I think the best advice that I can give to someone is, yes, feel what you feel, but move on.
Mhm.
Because if you stay in that one horrible, dark place,
Yeah.
you're not going to get yourself out of it. Because I think I literally said to you, Lou, I've hit rock bottom, but I needed to do that to get myself out of it.
Yeah, you did. And the hard part, and I 100% agree with you, feel what you feel. And the hard part, I think, for people is when somebody is going through such a tough, horrible time, what as humans we tend to do is we try and rush you through that emotion because it makes us uncomfortable, which is not fair, because we're doing that because we feel uncomfortable about it. But we need to allow you to feel how you feel, and we need to feel that with you and help you through that, and not rush you through that by saying, oh, you'll be fine, come on, like, get over it. No, if you're having a bad day, you are allowed to have a bad day. If all you do is get out of bed and breathe that day and go back to bed, you've had a good day, if that's what you needed to do. And I think that's hard, because I know when you've had such a traumatic thing happen, people want to get you through it, but sometimes you just need to feel your way through it, And
don't get me wrong, I still have bad days, Lou, as you
I know.
I still have really bad days where I get up and I'm so shook up from a nightmare or a feeling that I've had that has triggered or brought it back. I still have them all the time, but that's okay, because every single day makes me stronger. Like, people will ask me, oh, how's the leg? How's the cut? And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes I actually forget that it's there. And I do, because I feel like I've gotten to a point where I've moved on from it. And I think it was good. This podcast made me go back and revisit feelings I'd probably put aside that I didn't want to deal with or talk about. And like, the biggest thing for me as well is just gratitude, just being grateful and reflecting back. Like, I wrote so many notes, as you knew, Lou, that I wanted to kind of discuss today. And the last 2 weeks, I've been sitting back and being like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for this and I'm so grateful for that. And I have to say, the number one thing and person that I'm the most grateful for is Zach, my partner. Like, I cannot even put into words what he has done for me. Like, when I was in a wheelchair, I couldn't go take myself to the bathroom. I couldn't shower myself. I couldn't even do my hair. And I was
gonna say that the cutest thing, for a couple of weeks, Maddie would come to work and I'd say, Zach's getting good at them ponytails. He became a master hairdresser. He was doing very well.
It's a pretty good way to test out a future husband, right, Maddie?
Oh yes, like, my parents always say Zach is incredible in a crisis. Like, and
Pressure, Zach.
I feel like I've had quite a number of crises, but he has just been so good. And my grandmother had asked me once in my recovery, oh, how's Zach? And my first thought was, he's fine. What about me? And I kind of went back and thought, oh, this poor guy, like, I wonder what he is feeling. And I did ask him, and I said, like, are you okay? And he goes, yeah, I'm fine. And he actually said to me, it wasn't the cut and the gore. He was fine with that, but he saw a loved one in excruciating pain. And he said, for him as well, he watched me fall in. He was behind me and he literally watched me fall in, and he couldn't do a thing about it. And, I can't imagine how scary that must have been for him, because I used to go to bed with him at night and I would feel him have nightmares. I knew that he was struggling just as much as I was, but he was putting on a brave face for me. And the last couple of days, I have just sat back and reflected. I'm not going to get upset, but there are no words for how much I love this man. I know that I could have got through this by myself. There's no doubt I could have done it, but he helped me. And I solely 100% believe that the reason I healed as quick as I did was because I had someone like him to get me through it. Like, even in that moment that I was going through all that pain in hospital, I was watching him, and he the horrified look on his face to see what I was going through, but he was still there, and I knew he was never going to leave my side. And that's been the biggest reflection for me over the last week, is how lucky I am to have someone that loves me that much, that has stuck by my side through all of this. And I have not been easy. Like, I have self-sabotaged this relationship. I was really difficult to live with there for a while, and I was crying and I was so angry, and he was so patient. And I just think, oh my God, I'm so sorry for how I was. But
so,
yeah.
Maddie, look, I'm going to ask you, and Cam brought it up before, and we asked you advice to people that might be going through a bit of a tough time, or that are looking for a bit of a change. And you brought up feel the feeling. You've gone move on from that feeling. You've gone ask for help as well. And as you know, we try and help out, people within the real estate industry, whether it's new recruits or leaders, whoever's in there, or anyone listening, really. If they're going through something in their life, what else do you think maybe, because not everyone's going to go to Foster and slip down a rock and, cut their leg. I mean, what else can you help them with to get that aha or that change moment? What else can you give us? Do you feel that maybe was one of those big things?
I'll share some of the things that I've done that have really helped me, because it has been a healing journey. So look, the biggest thing is speak to your leader. Speak to your leader, because I have had conversations with Louise inside work, outside work, that haven't even been, like, a lot of our conversations have not even been work related, where I'm just like, throw me a bone with this, I'm struggling with this tonight. And she was always there. So speak to your leader, because that's what they're there for. They are there for that. A big thing, look, this isn't going to be for everyone, but a huge thing that has helped me was I started meditating. This has actually been the biggest thing that has healed me. Mm-hmm. Meditation and yoga. I've discovered something called a sound bath. So I'll let everyone kind of do their own research, but you're meditating, but there's live sounds of crystal bowls and gongs and everything going on in the background. And I'm so lucky that there's a lady that offers that service here, and I go to them weekly, and I always go back and I say to Louise, oh my gosh, you have to try this. It's changing my life, because I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it brings stuff to the surface. My very first sound bath that I went to, I was very emotional. Breath work, I highly recommend breath work. And it's because this is something that I still use today. Now, if I'm starting to feel overwhelmed at work, or there's something that's starting to trigger me, I just stop and I just take some deep breaths. And Thomas actually said something the other week that I thought was quite funny, because it's exactly what I do, is how to bring yourself in the moment is focus on one thing. So I'll rub my fingertips together, or I'll focus on a spot on the wall, or, am I warm? Am I cold? I center myself and just focus on my breathing. And it just, for me, that's what calms me down. But I do a lot of meditation before I go to sleep. Like, I'll put it on a sleep timer. And yoga, I go to the gym. When my brain is active and my body is active, I'm feeling good. So I think, I'm not telling people to sign up and go to the gym, but that's something that has hugely helped me, is being active and keeping my body moving and keeping myself healthy. But yeah, the number one thing, if you've never tried it, meditate. I love it so much that I've actually signed up to a course, and when I finish that at the end of the year, I'll be a fully accredited meditation teacher, because I want to help people go through something that I went through as well. There's a class in Newcastle, a couple of friends of mine, it's called Morning Mindfulness, and it's meditating, but you focus on your breathing and you center yourself. And those are the things that I said yes to, that I would not normally have done before. Playing tennis, playing golf, just try new things, step out of your comfort zone, because
more golf. More golf.
Step out of your comfort zone.
So Maddie, you've just brought up two things that I'm going to bring you back to. You've gone through, previously you said you're feeling like you're plateauing through life, which I think a lot of people fall into that comfort zone. And then you brought up this word, the comfort zone. So do you feel just saying yes to more and maybe no to other things that weren't so important? I'm asking you. I mean, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes,
sort of-
I no longer stress about things that I cannot control. So if something goes wrong at work that I cannot physically fix or
It's
control.
Louise's problem.
Go, palm it off to Lou.
Usually what she can't control. That's usually the problem she can't control.
But if there's, if for whatever reason, if it's something that I could have done differently, yes, but don't stress about it, learn from it, and then, going forward, fix it. But if there is something that I can't control, there is no point in worrying about it, because you know what? I went through something that did change my life significantly. Those little things, they don't matter. They do not matter.
Previously, were you worrying about that stuff?
Yes.
Were you worrying about that stuff? So you realised it was of no consequence, really, in the big picture, right?
Yeah. You asked Louise.
Amazing.
I was stressing about everything, and I was stressing about what if I was doing. I think the number one thing I used to say to Louise is, am I doing enough? Is this good enough?
Yeah.
And I had a huge conversation.
Every day, Maddie would say. And
I'm not good enough. That was the one thing, and I see you smiling, Thomas.
It's one thing one thing on top of your meditation and your breath work, and which has been doing amazing things for you. I know you've been doing a lot of reading. I know you've been doing a lot of podcasts, like listening to a lot of podcasts. So, I think it's important, like some people that struggle and aren't ready for the whole meditation thing, one page in one good book can change your entire mindset. And sometimes that's all it takes as well, just to help. But, I can't stress that enough to people as well, on top of the meditation and the breath work that you're doing. What are you consuming? Because, what you consume becomes your reality. And I know when you really took a deep dive into that as well, it was just in how you spoke. It was how you handled yourself. It was how you handled situations. Like, I can't even explain the change in Maddie since January 2nd, 2023 to now. Like, it's like I have a different colleague, really, a different colleague. It's amazing. It really is. So
something I'm always saying to Louise is, when I learn something new, I like to then progress on it. So because I'm learning this new way of life, I actually told Thomas, so there is a book that I'm reading called Maximum Achievement by Brian Tracy, and it is changing my life. Mm-hmm. I listen to lots of different podcasts though. Like, I listen to the Mark Boris podcast, and he's got these inspiring people, which makes me want to just dive in and do more. But then I listen to lots of affirmations as well.
One of wisdom.
Yeah.
One of wisdom.
Say, Jesus, we're not here.
I also am actually studying marketing and interior design. So I'm always training my brain into something new.
Can I tell you that the second one isn't working, Mads?
I know.
I'd ask for a refund.
Like a picture or something.
Jesus Christ.
That's a green screen.
Maddie just moved into her new house, so congratulations on the new house. But
yes.
Maddie, you said something that I thought that really hit me about 3 weeks ago when we last met. And you said, you know what, Thomas, one of the biggest lessons I got out of my accident is I've learned now never to say no to life. Do you want to talk a little bit more about this?
Yeah, it basically just goes back to what I was saying before. Like, I'm not going to say I'm going to take risks, because if anything, I'm so much more careful now than what I was before. But life is so precious. And every single day you wake up, you're given a second chance. So go to work and, challenge yourself and do better than what you did yesterday. if you've been fighting with your partner, you know, be better than what you were yesterday. Even if you were at your very, very best yesterday, be better, do better, and, you know, make people feel better about themselves than what they were when you first met them. Like, lift people up. And it goes well a lot with saying, you know, say yes to everything in life. I'm just always trying to be better as a person so that, you know, I don't die with any regrets, and I can say that I've lived a really, really good life. Because look, I was living a good life before. Nothing was wrong with my life, but I just feel like I've had this awakening that I just want to do more and be more and just be the best person that I can be, whether I'm, you know, as a colleague or as a friend or as a partner in life. I just think that this was a huge moment for me to just want to do better. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. Like, this needed to happen to me. I don't feel bad about what happened. This needed to happen to me. And I'm not glad it happened, but it happened, and I could either go up or I could go down, and I'm on my way up, and I'm going to keep going up.
There's always, like, I think I may have said it to you before, Mads, but there'll always be a Maddie before and a Maddie after the event, because it's two totally different people now. And I'm so glad that you found it within you to go up, because there was a time there when you were really, really struggling, and we were having long, teary conversations, and I thought, please God, take her up. And you know what? It takes courage to, you know, bounce back from something like that. It really does. To, you know, walking around with your walking stick. I watched you come into the office like crying because of how you felt and looked, and it's amazing. It's inspiring.
But maybe Madeline had no choice but to get better, and also I think that Isaac deserves to probably win the Oscar. Zach deserves. But I was going to ask you two things. First of all, is we haven't spoken about Zach, but as a partner who really is there to give you support and think, what about him? Has he spoken about the fact that he went to bed that night thinking, what about if she lost a foot? How do I move on? I mean, have you guys spoken about that? And my second question is, have both of you gone back to that same break wall?
Yes. So the very first question is, yes, we actually speak about it quite regularly. We're always talking about, you know, improvements in each other. And very, very early on, we spoke about how it was affecting him, because for a while there, I was really, really worried about him and how it was affecting him. He's very, very resilient, and he's kind of got this, like, everything's good and I'm fine. But I think that, you know, he did have to process what happened, because can you imagine your loved one, that happening to them? How would you feel? So I kind of put myself into his shoes. And there's still at times where I have to remind myself, like, just be patient, because he went through it all with me. Every single second of every single day, he went through it with me. He was right there by my side for all of it. He watched everything unfold. So yes, you know, we have spoken about it, and we've both actively moved on from it in a healthy way that we can talk about it. Like, when I shared with him that I was going to be on the podcast, we've spoken about it quite regularly, and he's been so supportive and reassuring and saying, you know, you'll be okay, and just speak your truth. And if there's things that you're not comfortable to talk about, don't push yourself too hard. But yeah, so he's been really good. Yes, I have been back down to the breakaway. It did take some time. It was actually only recently, I'm probably going to say in the last month. So Zach and I like to go for a morning walk basically every single morning. And our morning walk is from our house, our old house, which is in front of the Foster Marina. We'd go past our favorite cafe, up the breakwall, and then back. And then when the accident happened, we'd go from our house to the cafe, back home. And we would just skip that whole break wall. No one spoke a word about it. He knew that I was refusing to go back there. I did not want to deal with it. I was fearful. I was sick. And we go fishing a lot. So there was quite a number of times we would need to go past that break wall, but I would have my back to it. I didn't want to deal with it. That was a part of my life I wasn't ready to deal with, and I didn't want to, but he never ever pushed me. He never once said, oh, come on. Like, there was a couple of times we'd go fishing and we'd be walking and he'd be like, do you want to go there? And I would say, no. No problem. Like, he would never push me because he knew that when I was ready to do it, I would do it. So, which was the biggest help to me. But there was one morning, and it was basically after I'd been doing all of these things to lift myself back up, we were at the cafe and I said to him, let's keep going. And he kind of just looked at me and he was like, he didn't question it. He was like, okay. And we kept walking and he kind of led the way a little bit for me, but also just kept making sure that I was there. And he did keep asking me, are you okay? Are you good? And I was like, yep, I'm fine. Because it happened as you're walking up the break wall, it was on the left. So as we were walking up, I just stayed to the right. He was to the left of me. He held my hand the entire time and, squeezed it to, metaphorically say, I'm here for you. And then on the way back, he let me walk on my own. And I didn't ask him to do that, but I think that he knew that that's what I needed. And it got to that point and I stopped. And I knew exactly where it happened because I knew that where I'd been carried was at a big rock and it was right in front of that. So I stopped and my eyes were shut and I was just telling myself, like, you're so brave. You can do this. I'm fine and I'm tough and I'm strong. I can do this. And I opened my eyes and it was awful. It was an awful feeling. I was so sick, but I just pushed through it and I scanned the area and I was looking at all the different oyster beds and it was making I felt so eerie and my skin was crawling, but I just pushed through it. And I was letting out a lot of emotion. I was quite teary, but he just stood back and he let me have my moment. He wasn't, he was so good. And then I dealt with it and then we kept walking and I said to him, I think that's what I needed to do to let go. I didn't realize that was the one thing that I was holding on to. I thought I'd let go of everything and I thought I was fine, but I still didn't want to deal with that. But as soon as I went down there and I faced my fears, I said to him, I feel free. I feel the biggest release and I feel like everything's going to be okay. Like, I'm going to be okay. So, yeah.
Ooh, I felt like I didn't breathe for like 2 minutes then. Oh, man.
That's amazing.
Mm.
We're getting to the closing of our podcast. I think it's probably been a very, very good one, if not one of the best one I have ever attended to. So why don't we just close maybe with what we got out of Maddie's experience and sharing, and thank you so much for sharing, Maddie. And I think that the day that you want to stop this thing, I think that you are starting to forge a career in inspiration, speaking circuit. I think that you can do so well. So what is one of the lessons that we've learned? And then I probably would ask Cam if you can probably close, but also Maddie, if you can have a closing statement, okay? So I'll start so that I can say that, whatever I have to say, and then you guys got more important things to say. But Maddie, I think that for me, the day that you said I have learned never to say no to life or no to anything, like you learn to play tennis and you never played tennis, you learn to do meditation and you've never done that, you're doing things that a lot of people would have said no to. That to me was the most inspiring thing. And on that trip back all the way from Tari back to Sydney, I was thinking, I gotta get this girl onto the podcast, because what she said there, it's still not out of my head, and we're close to Sydney, and so I just want to thank you for today. All right. So for me, never say no to life. Beautiful.
I think I'll go next. For me, Mads, there's so many things because I've been with you a lot through this journey, but I think the most inspiring thing is the resilience that you've shown to go through something so horrific and just bounce back, but not bounce back just to the level that you were. You bounce back to an incredible, amazing, and it's making me cry now, so I'm going to try not to, but you've just been an inspiration to all of us.
All right, I'll save a life there. I'll throw a lifeline out to the old Lou there. Look, I think it's unreal the fact that we're only talking about a factor of like 6-7 months from going through. You know, I need to ask: did you catch any fish when you were fishing on the rocks? Did you catch anything?
No, that was the worst part.
Oh, that sucks. No, that's it. Podcast over.
I thought that was going to be the story. I hooked a whale on it.
Always hooked me.
We have made a new office policy though. When people are on holidays, they're not to go fishing. Because Eddie actually did the same thing 2 days later and got a gash in his leg with 25 stitches.
Yeah.
All right.
What
I was going to say, Maddie, is I think it's unbelievable that we're only halfway through the year and you're sitting here, gone through all that and they've turned such a corner. And I like on the back of what Thomas's statement is that you've realised that, you know, there's so much life out there and you've got rid of all the unnecessary baggage. And I read a line before the podcast. It was like, the more you let go, the higher you will rise.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what you've done is you've let go of the crap and you're taking the good, you're taking the things that you want to live, you're living your life, which I think is unbelievable. It's unfortunate you had to go through such an event to reach that, but to do that within such a short period, a turnaround, because you're only a young lady. I think there's people that 3 times your age that still haven't seen that. So thanks for sharing. Thanks for your lesson. Because I didn't know any of the story behind that. And I've taken so many notes. Thank you very much, Maddie. Thank you very, very much.
You.
Well, I've got 2 things. One, I will kill you at tennis. I will destroy you at tennis. All right?
Not at fishing. He won't beat you at fishing. Just let you know.
And Maddie, you better believe him, Maddie, because he almost killed my son. He actually did.
You can ask Alex Hoang, who can't walk either because of a game of tennis with me. All right, so we'll do a podcast about that. Listen, I think so many podcasts, so many books, so many stories like this that people use as inspiration. I just wish one day, as humans, we stop waiting to fall off a rock into the ocean before we start living life. I almost think it's a shame that it takes a story like this. And Mads, you did so well. Oh, it's great to have someone talk so much apart from Lou on this podcast. It's brilliant. But I actually think it's a shame that we keep needing stories like this to remind ourselves to live our life. And I think the lesson is don't wait for someone else to fall off a rock and lose a leg for you to start doing what you want to be doing in the world. I think that needs to be the story, because I'm sure Madsy wishes that she'd started long before she got hurt to do it, because how much more fun are you having now? Loads more fun. Yeah. And it's a weird anomaly with us humans that it takes us such a traumatic event for us to actually start living where we've been given the gift to start with. Like you look out at the stars tonight and realise how frigging lucky you are to actually even be here, because the universe is what the universe is, but too many of us wait till it's life or death before we actually start the process. So well done, Mads.
Thank you.
Good job.
Matt, would you like to close, please?
I'm going to share 3 things that are almost like affirmations for me, and I hope that they mean what they mean to me, to everyone else. So life is short, be grateful, and every single day is a second chance and a new beginning.
Yes, beautiful.
I did the three things. I thought it was just one. I did the three things.
Number three.
Thank you so much for today, Matt, and I mean it. I think that this experience has got so much more for you. You moved me. You have inspired me. I think you've inspired all of our people here. You've got an amazing future ahead of you. I think that Zach really is someone that is inspiring to listen to, probably. And thanks again.
Thanks, Maddie.
All the
Thanks,
best.
Maddie.
Thank you. See you guys.